Speaker, sir, included verily the introduction of variable capital companies, which I will refer to as VCC during the rest of my speech. The vision of this government in ensuring that Mauritius be a reputed international financial center, IFC, with a diversified product offering to best suit the needs of investors, was deeply anchored then and is still anchored and being translated into a reality today. The VCC bill concerns the investment fund sector, which is one of the most dynamic segments of the financial services sector, with a growing number of youth professionals equipped with the knowledge and skills working in the industry. Allow me here, Mr. Speaker, sir, to refer to what Honorable Utim said earlier. He stated that bringing the VCC bill in Singapore was a game changer, but that, however, it will not be the case for Mauritius. I here quote Ms. Honorable Abin with his permission, who on the other side said that it will be a game changer. And we on this side of the House do have a positive attitude and believe that yes, definitely it will be a game changer. Mr. Speaker, sir, Honorable Utim also stated, unfortunately, that Mauritius and the ministry didn't do enough. He stated in his own words that it could have done more and that there was a lack of innovation. But I believe that, as Honorable Lobin again said, that the timing is right. The time is now. And when we speak about the investment fund sector, I again think about all those young professionals, all those young graduates, and having specialization in the financial services industry, in the fund management services. And indeed, if we are able to tap into this now, it will create, I believe, a huge pool for more and more youths to join this important sector, which is a key pillar of our economy. Honorable Utim mentioned this. He was comparing to the past that there are more funds ceasing to operate and that new funds starting operation is having a downward trend. But how to change things? This is how to change things, Mr. Speaker, sir, by bringing about this bill, the amendments, and disseminating it. Of course, we need the collaboration of all the stakeholders, and this is where I wish to reiterate what the Honourable Minister stated in his speech earlier. Before bringing this bill to the House, there has been extensive consultation and discussion with regulators and stakeholders, both from the private and the public sector. And it is only with the inputs of all that this bill in this form has been presented to the House today. As Honorable Lobin mentioned, he was himself part of these stakeholder meetings and discussions. A concept paper on the VCC was circulated to the industry stakeholders, and the draft of the bill was also published on the FSC website for wider consultation last year in October. Hence, this current bill is a fruit of extensive consultation and discussion with all stakeholders, including the Ministry of Financial Services, the Ministry of Finance, Economic Planning and Development, the Attorney General Office, the Financial Services Commission, the MRA, and the Register of Companies, amongst many others. Mr. Speaker, sir, if by now some are still wondering the rationale of this bill, why this bill is important, let us be reminded that we are living in an era of cutthroat competition, and with respect to the investment fund sector, be it from other international financial centers such as Singapore, Cayman, Isle of Man, or more recently, the Gift City in Gujarat, India, we, as a jurisdiction of choice, we need to innovate and keep up to the benchmark. Moreover, this bill helps to make the offerings of our financial services sector more appealing to investors, as explained in detail by the Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, sir, before me, Honourable Lobin, Honourable Bola, and even Honourable Utim have dwelt extensively on the advantages of bringing a VCC, and I will not dwell into that. Allow me to just come to a few main points. I hereby take the time of the House to talk about the regulation of companies in Mauritius, whereby the Companies Act is the main legislation governing the setting up and registration of companies in Mauritius. It applies to all companies, whether domestic or those with a global business license. The Companies Act provides for incorporation, governance, disclosure, protection of shareholders, mergers and acquisition of companies. Well, under the same veins, a VCC will be governed by the provisions of a proposed bill, but it will still be incorporated under the Companies Act, just like it was the case for the protected sales companies. A VCC will, however, be exempted from the application of certain provisions of the Companies Act. Mr. Speaker, sir, some of the salient features of this bill include Part 2, which provides for a VCC to be incorporated as a variable capital company, and which states that a company which has already been incorporated under the Companies Act may even be converted as a VCC, and a company incorporated outside Mauritius may be registered by way of continuation as a VCC. As Honourable Lobin explained extensively again, how this can bring the investors to Mauritius and actually help us tap into this pool of investors, or even existing companies which can now continue through Mauritius as a VCC. I believe that this is key. Part 3 of the bill, which embeds clauses 5 to 7, provide that the VCC shall be a body corporate and have a legal personality. But the business of the VCC would be carried out by its sub-funds or special purpose vehicles. As Honourable Utin explained, like it can be set up either as a separate entity or as an umbrella of sub-funds, each one having a separate legal entity. Well, while Honourable Utim believes that this can be complex and he has been questioning the application of same, on the other hand, we believe that this will verily be the edge that we can provide over, for instance, the VCC of Singapore. So as per clause 5, that sub-fund or SPV can opt to have a legal personality which is separate from the VCC. Clause 6 of the bill provides for the requirement for a VCC to, of course, include the words variable capital company in its name, and provides for minimum requirements that the constitution of a VCC has to comply with. And let us be reminded here that the main objective of a VCC is to operate as an investment fund. The reason why I am laying emphasis on this is, as Honourable Lobin concluded, that the application of this bill will indeed be challenging, and we have to be reminded of the objective of this bill, and especially to disseminate this to stakeholders in the industry. Clause 7 stipulates that no VCC should operate without the authorization as a VCC fund by the FSC, while its sub-funds can operate either as collective investment schemes or as closed-ended funds, subject, of course, to the approval of the FSC. Part 4 of this bill, which consists of clauses 8 to 19, provide for procedures regarding the creation and incorporation of sub-funds or SPVs. The SPVs shall operate as vehicles ancillary to a variable capital company or as a sub-fund of a VCC. Clause 11 provides for segregated assets and liabilities of sub-fund and SPVs, which again the orators before me explained lengthily on the advantages of having assets and liabilities which are not attributable to any particular sub-fund or SPV, but which should be allocated between the sub-funds or SPV in a manner which would not be prejudicial to participants in the sub-funds or the SPV. The application, again, will be key here. Clause 12 of the bill is another important aspect of the VCC bill, as it allows for economies of scale. How? It allows for a VCC to appoint only one CIS manager, CIS administrator, custodian, or other service provider for all its sub-funds, hence making it more cost-effective. Part 5 of the bill provides for procedures and requirements regarding the issuance of shares, redemption, buyback, and reduction of shares, on which the Honourable Minister explained. As for Part 6 of the bill, it mostly relates to reporting obligations. And Part 7 of the bill stipulates that anyone contravening the provisions of the VCC bill shall actually commit a criminal offence and be liable to a fine not exceeding 500,000 rupees and an imprisonment for a term not exceeding 5 years. Mr. Speaker, sir, consequential amendment under this bill, which is being brought under Clause 26, also requires adjustment to the following. The FIAMLA, to include a VCC under the definition of financial institution, the Financial Services Act, to include the Variable Capital Company Act as a relevant act, the Income Tax Act, to provide for the taxation of each sub-fund or SPV separately, the Financial Services Special Purpose Fund Rules 2021, and the Securities Real Estate Investment Trust Rules 2021. Mr. Speaker, sir, allow me again to come to the words of Honourable Utim, who said that we could have done this or we could have done that in the past. But the time is now, because if we want to change things, the time to act is now. So to sum up, I wish to reiterate the main rationale behind this bill today, which is to provide Mauritius with this competitive edge as not only a robust international financial center, but one which can satisfy the growing diverse needs of investors and make it verily be the undisputed choice. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Honorable Boulel, now you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Since you've given me the floor with a nice smile, I'll try to be polite. Mr. Speaker, we are proponents of this bill. It looks like a bunch of roses in the palette of financial services. But whether there are more petals than thorn, time will tell. And let's hope the thorns are not too prickly. Financial services is a sector which is growing. Though we had a setback, but I hope we'll recover lost ground. A sector where there is democratization of the economy, a purveyor of gainful employment. But we have to err on the principle of caution. I've listened very intently to speeches delivered by friends on both sides of the House. The Minister mentioned that this is a milestone. Whether he will blaze the trail, time will tell. But it is true, this is a technical bill with far-reaching consequences. I agree it is attractive, an innovative product, but not without risk. And earlier, Honorable Utim made a very interesting point and canvassed the idea that there should be a legislation for funds. And the VCCs used by international funds for open and closed investment funds and special funds such as hedge and venture capital funds. And it's good we go back in yesteryears to understand the intricacies of the financial services and how the services evolved. Successive governments since 1988 have always tackled aggressive tax evasion and avoidance to make the tax system fairer and simpler. Of course, the mantra has always been neat and clean. But it's fair to say that the narrative has begun to change as from 2015, with the consequences that we were on the grey list of the Financial Action Task Force in February 2020 and the blacklist. Of course, taken off early this year following compliance to regulatory and enforcement measures in our commitment to wage war on anti-money laundering and financing of terrorism. Mr. Speaker, I stated in my opening speech and make a plea that we should err on the principle of caution. And the reputation of our jurisdiction has to be protected every inch of the way. The bill is a strong link, but more vital links are needed to emulate the success of Singapore. Not that we want to be a copycat, but Singapore has set the trend, and it's fair that we put on our best endeavor to emulate the success of Singapore. Because this is a world, Mr. Speaker, where there is no free lunch, and the days of preferences are almost behind us, and we have to tread cautiously. With one mistake made, our competitors would be too happy to damage the reputation of our jurisdiction. Some argue that since the demarcation line between tax evasion and tax avoidance is narrow, any loophole would be exploited by money launderers to blur the contour and the edges. The financial services sector's no risk, high reward. And like the Monetary Authority of Singapore, we have to spare no effort and be on the constant watch out. The Monetary Authority of Singapore is paying attention to new ways that dirty money is channeling into the financial system, singling out the new breed of fund companies known as variable capital companies and virtual assets or digital payment tokens. If loopholes are not closed, monitoring and supervisory mechanisms are strictly adhered to. If they are not strictly adhered to, then, if they are strictly adhered to and loopholes are closed, then Mauritius will be a much sought after jurisdiction. It has been stated, let me reiterate, that the variable capital company has the potential to be a global game changer and a gateway to Africa for funds to be domiciled in Mauritius. It is precisely the reason when I listened to my good friend, and he reiterated it and reminded me that there was wide discussion at the bar of public opinion. But there's also room for the information to be widely disseminated. Because the more the information is disseminated, the better it is for the sector, the better it is for all stakeholders. Because at the end of the day, it is the taxi driver also who will earn a living. Not only the fine gentleman or the lady who is sitting at the director's table, Mr. Speaker. But then this is the politics of empowerment, empowering young people, dedicated people, who are academically well endowed, who are willing to make the leap, to move from generic to areas of specialization. This is why we have to put emphasis on training, on reskilling, on skilling, because awareness, endowment, academic prowess, and interaction, exchange of information is important for the sector to grow. There's one thing, assuring a legislation, understanding the relevance and importance of a legislation, of course, matters a lot. But what matters more is that we need to be a center of repute. Unfortunately, we are no longer cited as a showcase. And how could I, Mr. Speaker, sir, forget the praise lavished on Mauritius at the Africa Growth Opportunities Act meeting held in early August of 2009 in Nairobi. We were like peacocks, Mr. Speaker, sir. We could spread our wings, and we were proud because we had a center of repute. And this is what we need to do, turn this center into a center of repute. But we must say there are miles to go. But as I've stated earlier, we can easily recover lost ground. The minister argued that the provisions of the bill, especially sections 8, 9, 3, 12, 15 and 18 and 19, the other provisions of the legislation provide safeguard. And the main object of the bill is to serve the interests of the public. But to serve the interests of the public, Mr. Speaker, we have to put investors at par with integrity. We have to make sure that we are dealing with investors who are fit and proper. It is not because penalty for offences are stiff and the amendments to the FAMLA are wide that the battle is won. The bill has been at the SL office since a year. Stakeholders have been privileged to interactive session to discuss the merits and the demerits of the bill, which have been highlighted by my good friend, Honorable Bola. And one of the merits are the variable capital company, and the ancillary sub-fund or the special purpose vehicle is its flexibility in the issue and redemption of shares and payment of dividends from capital or income. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, have the risks been weighed? Mr. Speaker, to weigh the risks and to minimize the risks, there is an obligation upon institutions like the MRA, the FSC, the Register of Cooperatives, and the Director of Insolvency Services. After all, MRA, or for that matter, any other body, has an obligation to report to relevant bodies, to interact, to exchange information, to cluster their forces, their strength, and to act in unison and not act as separate entities. These institutions have to come together because the object is to order threat and to situate where the opportunities are and to grasp the opportunities. We signed the FACTA and the DTA for the specific purpose. As I say, all relevant institutions have to be on the alert, and it's a reawakening call. It is not because the VCC is flexible, easy to manage, that it should have differential treatment. We are still under probation from our recent exit from EU blacklist and the grey list of the Financial Action Task Force. And it's good to remind the House that it was under the regime of the and constantly watching. Of course, the heads and staff of these service providers, namely the FSC. And the FSC has to be like Caesar's wife, above reproach. It has to act speedily, but with utmost care. But it has to act and shouldn't be seen to delay applications unnecessarily. Act smart, and be confident. I must say, since we have no longer, we've exited from the grey list or the FATF and the EU blacklist, I still feel our friends from the FSC suffer from some kind of inferiority complex. It's time to stand up, be counted, and ward off any threat, and come back to senses and make it known to one and all that they are here today, here to stay, and here to dispense services. The FSC has to live up to the expectation of investors, of fund managers, because no one owes us a living. And as I say earlier, there is no free lunch, and competition remains fierce. We have to level up. Singapore's all out to smart us and to stab us if we don't watch our back. And what about Mother India? Make in India, and what does India think of our jurisdiction? It wants to know if we have conducted feasibility study on the variable capital company. Dr. Krishnan headed an expert committee on variable capital company, had submitted its report on the feasibility of variable capital companies in the International Financial Services Center to the chairperson of the International Financial Services Centers Authority. But where is our report? In whose drawer is it? How much dust has it collected? There's a call for clarification, and I hope the Minister will enlighten us and tell us where the text document to highlight the merits and to answer to the genuine concern expressed. There's still a quest for information as we are still recovering from severe bruises inflicted upon us by the Financial Action Task Force and the European Union. Mr. Speaker, the setting up and operation of variable capital companies and ancillary companies matters and should help to consolidate the financial ecosystem. Unfortunately, as I say, we don't have the zeal, commitment, and acumen of services provided by Singapore. Singapore remains a textbook reference on governance and transparency. And why is the VCC fund attractive to Singapore? Its legal jurisdiction, it has a high ranking globally for rule of law, order and security, and almost free from corruption, contrary to Mauritius. Let us address economic fundamentals and be a legal jurisdiction of repute before we come to other fancies. The Minister of Financial Services made a long statement to remind us that the risk of money laundering and financing of terrorism is always high, despite his good intention to set the house of cards in order. And a member of the Deloitte Legal Network reminded us that VCC is subject to anti-money laundering and combating of financing terrorism obligation and must appoint an eligible financial institution to assist with performing customer due diligence, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the VCC, as I said, is subject to scrutiny under Section 6.4, but the Financial Services Commission has to rule the waves. Will they? As I say, they have an obligation to do so. Because safeguards, yes, but we want more than safeguards. We want the guardrails also. The VCC, like the Singapore corporate entity, must be used for the standalone, the comprehensive, the collective investment system and an umbrella CIS with multiple sub-funds. Mr. Speaker, financial statements of the funds have to comply fully to the international financial reporting standards adopted by the International Accounting Standards Board, Mr. Speaker. They remain the backstop, the guardrail, and the best safeguard. Since the law was enacted, Mr. Speaker, nothing is or should be taken for granted. It is not because Singapore has many edges on us that we should rush in. My advice, as I've stated earlier, is to err on the principle of caution. Mr. Speaker, let me conclude by saying that there is no room for errors. Another setback will tarnish our reputation and we will be considered as a laundromat. The Minister has a responsibility to give us firm assurances that VCC is not a gateway for anti-money laundering and financing of terrorism. As we say, the devils are not always in the details. Sometimes the writing is on the wall. The new rules and guidelines of the FSC are yet to be published. We look forward to these rules and guidelines. As I say, safeguards, otherwise the sector will be off the rail, again, which no one wants. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, over the years, Mauritius has established itself as a vibrant and leading international fund management center. Honorable Siratan has provided the figures. There are around 1,000 collective investment schemes and closed-end funds which are set up and administered from Mauritius, and 432 CIS managers which are licensed by the FSC. As of June 2021, management companies, most of them offer, of course, fund administration services, employed around 4,500 persons, while CIS managers employed around 170 persons. Most of these employees are high-skilled professionals. This shows how crucial is the investment fund sector to Mauritius. At the world stage, competition is tough with respect to the investment fund sector, be it from other international financial centers such as Singapore, Cayman, or most recently, JFT City. For this reason, we need to innovate and follow the international trend. The introduction of this corporate structure will allow us to capture value from the full fund management value chain. This corporate structure can be used like a traditional fund structure as well as in creative and innovative way. It is a combination of legal entity and a fund structure which may be used for all types of investment funds, including mutual funds, hedge funds, private equity, and real estate funds. Mr. Speaker, sir, our financial sector today is built upon three pillars: cross-border investment, cross-border corporate banking, and private banking and wealth management. The core area of specialization is the facilitation of cross-border investments and related fund administration activities, which comprise an estimated 88% of IFC tax revenues and 70% of the sector's employment. In line with the Mauritian government's Vision 2030, target to double the size of the financial sector, we thus aspire to grow its contribution to GDP to $1.9 billion, which will increase IFC-related employment by 1.5 times to approximately 17,000 jobs and increase tax revenue to approximately $0.3 billion. Achieving these ambitions are dependent on many factors, including adapting our legislative framework to cater for vehicles and structures meeting the needs and demands of the international market. Hence, the very recent adoption of the Virtual Asset and Initial Token Offering Services Act, and now the introduction of the Variable Capital Companies Bill. This sector, Mr. Speaker, sir, has its own dynamics. And to reach the milestones and achieve the targets set, we need to keep up with the pace of the market and match the fierce competition with other jurisdictions. The growth of our financial sector also rests on parameters of compliance with international norms and guidelines. However, the expansion and growth of the sector were challenged. The sector was already subjected to growing international pressure, adverse press coverage, and the changing international economic landscape. And the fact that Honorable Utim and Honorable Boulel raised the issue, let me therefore also address the matter. Not only it is relevant, but it is important to recall how challenging the past 2 years has been for the sector, and to highlight the commitment and effort put in by the Prime Minister and the government in ensuring that our financial sector lives to the reputation it has built itself. Mr. Speaker, sir, February 2020, the Financial Action Task Force, FATF, placed Mauritius, along with 17 other countries, on its grey list. And as a consequence of this listing, Mauritius was also listed on the EU's list of high-risk countries, the blacklist, which was effective as from October 2020. A serious challenge for a sector which is a core part of the Mauritian economy, a sector which contributes almost $1 billion to GDP and approximately $180 million in tax revenues, and provides nearly 12,000 to 15,000 jobs. Ceci dit, the FATF did acknowledge the progress made by Mauritius in improving its technical compliance with the FATF recommendations and increasing the level of effectiveness of its AML-CFT system during the one-year observation period, which started in October 2018 and ended in October 2019. Honorable Boulel is right. Successive governments have contributed in building the reputation of our financial sector. But unfortunately, the level of commitment has varied from government to government. The listing in 2020, Mr. Speaker, sir, did not just crop up within a span of a couple of years. Il faudra remonter dans le temps pour cela. Far back as 2007, when Mauritius underwent a prior assessment in 2007 under the FATF methodology of 2004. The assessment was focused on technical compliance with the then FATF 40+9 recommendations, and the mutual evaluation report was published in August 2008. Several deficiencies were identified therein, in particular regarding the AML-CFT regulation on the designated non-financial businesses and professions, including casinos, real estate agents, legal and accounting professionals. However, limited action was taken to address these deficiencies. En 2012, the FATF reviewed its recommendations, and countries were requested to initiate actions to ensure compliance with the revised recommendation. That is what we now call 40 FATF recommendations. Again, Mr. Speaker, sir, unfortunately, no action was initiated by the authorities at that time, and this resulted in the 2018 MER report with modest ratings for the country. And Mr. Speaker, sir, it is good to note that in practice, after a country has undergone a mutual evaluation, it is expected that it will address all its technical deficiencies within the first 2 years following the adoption of its MER. Subsequently, the country has up to 3 years to improve its level of effectiveness. Actually, the inertia demonstrated at that time from 2008 and subsequently 2012 led to a large number of technical deficiencies being highlighted in the Mauritius MER report, and we were rated low or moderate against all the 11 immediate outcomes. It is only, Mr. Speaker, sir, in 2015 that major changes were brought. 2015, the Asset Recovery Investigative Department under the Asset Recovery Act was introduced. 2018, amendments were made to 19 legislations relating to money laundering, and furthermore, toujours 2018, a new financial intelligence and anti-money laundering regulation was promulgated, which set out the whole range of FATF preventive measures to be implemented by the relevant actors in the industry. Still 2018, we came up with a new Declaration of Assets Bill. 2019, another important piece of legislation, that is the Anti-Money Laundering and Combating the Financial of Terrorism and Proliferation Miscellaneous Provision Act 2019 was enacted. 2020, the AML-CFT Miscellaneous Provision Act 2020 was passed. To be more direct, Mr. Speaker, sir, from 2018 to date, 46 pieces of legislation were amended to assist Mauritius in strengthening its AML-CFT regime. The FATF noted that since the adoption of its MER in 2018, Mauritius has made significant progress in addressing most of the MER recommended actions to improve technical compliance with the FATF 40 recommendations and to increase the level of effectiveness of its AML-CFT system. Le gouvernement was proactive in tackling the strategic deficiencies, inter alia, et sans creuser dans les détails, through the setting up of an interministerial committee chaired by the Honorable Prime Minister himself to monitor closely the progress made in the implementation of the action plan. Mr. Speaker, sir, getting out of the grey and the black list was a result of considerable effort, commitment, determination, and hard work by the government, but also the private operators. Things did not simply roll out of a box. Le Premier Ministre, le Ministre des Services Financiers, and all other officers from different ministries and various stakeholders toiled to make it happen. And the result, Mr. Speaker, sir, Mauritius was commended for its strong political commitment and the sustained progress made in the implementation of the FATF action plan. Just 16 months after placing Mauritius on its grey list, the FATF made the initial determination that Mauritius has substantially completed its action plan. In fact, FATF has concluded that Mauritius has strengthened the effectiveness of its AML-CFT regime and has addressed all the strategic deficiencies identified in its action plan. Several countries went on to congratulate and commend Mauritius for successfully completing the FATF action plan, despite challenges caused by COVID-19 pandemic and the significant progress achieved within such record time frame. Using the words of Honorable Boulel, this is when the peacock actually fully spread its feathers in splendor in front of the whole world. We now continue under the close supervision of the Prime Minister along this path and will remain committed to maintain the standards set by international supervisory or advisory organizations. Our jurisdiction remains a reference in the financial sphere and remains an international financial center of sound repute. We need to understand that this sector is crucial for the country. Singapore, yes, is a leading jurisdiction in this sector. We all acknowledge the fact that Singapore is rated A, if I can term it as A grade. But in Singapore, the financial sector does not suffer from intense negative publicity of our jurisdiction from the press. Nor does Singapore has members of the opposition that resolve at creating propaganda to paint black the image of the country vis-à-vis la communauté internationale. I say it again, we have to understand that this sector is crucial for the country. This sector employs nearly 15,000 people, and all those, the livelihood of all those thousands of people are at stake. So we need to be reasonable in our approach, and at times leave politics aside and think in the better interests of the country. And Mr. Speaker, sir, this bill is another stone being laid towards the development and growth of the sector. This bill will help regenerate and rejuvenate the fun industry. To conclude, Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm confident that this sector has untapped potentials that this bill will bring forth and further confirm Mauritius as a competitive jurisdiction as opposed to our direct competing jurisdictions. With these words, Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish to commend the Honourable Minister of Financial Services and Good Governance for bringing this bill to the House. Thank you, sir.
Monsieur le Président, permettez-moi d'abord de remercier tous les membres qui ont intervenu sur ce projet de loi. Projet de loi très technique, je dois dire, mais je crois que chacun des membres qui sont intervenus ont pu expliquer le but de ce projet de loi, et j'espère que les autres membres présents ici aujourd'hui ont compris mieux ce projet de loi, et aussi le public qui nous écoute peut comprendre mieux de quoi il en est lorsqu'on parle de Variable Capital Company. Je dois aussi noter que des deux côtés de la Chambre, il y a eu plus ou moins consensus par rapport à le besoin de ce nouveau produit et que, dans l'ensemble, tous les membres sont d'accord que c'est un produit intéressant et qui va aider au développement de notre secteur financier. Néanmoins, j'observe que l'honorable Robin, qui est aussi un opérateur, je dois dire, qui est un player dans ce secteur, qui a eu l'occasion de participer dans des réunions consultatives au moment où on discutait sur ce projet de loi. Il a pu apporter sa contribution et, de par son intervention, je suis heureux d'entendre qu'il est tout à fait d'accord, complètement d'accord avec ce projet de loi. J'attendais aussi à ce que l'honorable Outim, qui est aussi allons dire, quelqu'un qui est très impliqué dans ce secteur, qu'il aurait aussi donné son soutien total à ce que ce projet de loi soit introduit aujourd'hui ici, dans cette Chambre. Il a commencé par dire que voilà, la situation est catastrophique à Maurice, le secteur connaît des difficultés. C'est vrai, Monsieur le Président, on a connu des périodes difficiles avec la Covid en 2020-2021, aussi avec Maurice, qui a été placé sur la liste grise du GAFI et aussi la liste noire de l'Union européenne. Maintenant qu'on est sorti de toutes ces listes, c'est le moment, bien sûr, de relancer et de redynamiser les secteurs, et la raison pour laquelle on vient de l'avant avec ce nouveau produit. Ce n'est pas le seul produit, on a introduit une nouvelle loi en décembre 2021 par rapport aux Digital Assets. Aujourd'hui, avec ce projet de loi, en ce qui concerne le Variable Capital Company, ça démontre l'effort du gouvernement, l'effort de mon ministère pour venir de l'avant avec des produits dont il y a un intérêt général dans cet espace financier, et il y a un appétit pour ce produit, et raison pour laquelle on vient de l'avant pour offrir, encore une fois, d'autres produits et services qui va être, j'espère, très attrayant pour Maurice comme une juridiction, comme un centre financier. Alors, on a bien sûr vu un peu ce qui se passe ailleurs. Il ne faut jamais réinventer la roue, comme on dit. Donc, il y a bien sûr le modèle singapourien, mais il y a le modèle de GRC, mais il y a aussi d'autres modèles. Et Maurice, ce qu'on a fait lors des discussions qu'on a eues, que ce soit au niveau du régulateur, mais aussi avec les opérateurs, voir comment rendre ce produit encore plus intéressant. La raison pour laquelle ce produit, aujourd'hui, qu'on vient d'offrir, permet d'avoir des features, comme on peut appeler, plus que offre le Singapour ou les autres juridictions. Parce qu'on veut présenter un produit qui est mieux ce qui est offert aujourd'hui sur ce monde financier. Parce que, comme j'ai dit encore une fois, c'est qu'on veut relancer ce secteur, redynamiser le secteur qui, comme vous le savez tous, c'est un secteur qui est très dynamique, les choses bougent très vite, et on ne peut pas rester comme si dormir et ne rien faire. Donc, d'une part, on veut que les choses bougent, mais lorsqu'on vient avec des projets pareils où il y a des aspects innovants, l'honorable Tim commence à émettre des réserves pour dire que, faites attention, ça risque de ne pas marcher. Il a parlé sur le fait d'avoir le sub-funds étant avoir la possibilité d'être une entité à part entière, avoir une personnalité propre. Je pense, et il pose la question, comment ça va fonctionner avec un PCC et aussi avec un sub-funds ayant chacun une entité propre. Ça existe partout, Monsieur le Président. Dans un groupe de compagnies, il y a le holding, il y a les subsidiaires, donc il n'y a rien qui empêche à ce que ça puisse fonctionner. D'ailleurs, l'honorable Lobin a expliqué, donné un peu les justifications, et encore une fois, j'ai dit, ce n'est pas une obligation, c'est une possibilité qui offre dans ce projet de loi à ce que quelqu'un puisse aussi avoir un sub-fund qui soit incorporé comme une entité à part entière. Donc, pour vous dire encore une fois, Monsieur le Président, c'est qu'on offre un produit aujourd'hui qui donne plus que les autres juridictions en ont donné. Alors, pour nous, on vient avec tout ça parce qu'il y a eu des longues consultations et il y a cette demande de l'industrie et raison pour laquelle, aujourd'hui, on vient de l'avant avec ce projet de loi. La réserve émise par l'honorable Boulel par rapport à des risques de blanchiment des capitaux, j'avais fait mention dans mon intervention plutôt que on vient avec un amendement au FIAMLA pour inclure un VCC comme un Financial Institutions, pour que, justement, ça soit capturé sous ce projet de loi, afin qu'il s'adhère avec les provisions de cette loi par rapport à tout ce qui est le blanchiment des capitaux. Donc, je peux donner l'assurance au niveau de cette Chambre, mais aussi à la population et à l'industrie, que ce gouvernement a fait tout ce qui est possible pour sortir Maurice de la liste grise du GAFI et de la liste noire de l'Union européenne. On a travaillé dur pour ça, il y a eu beaucoup d'efforts, beaucoup d'énergie, et en temps record, on est sorti de cette liste. Et personne les gens qui ont été impliqués dans cet exercice, personne ne veut aujourd'hui se retrouver dans ces listes encore. C'est la raison pour laquelle l'effort du gouvernement, c'est de faire tout ce qui est possible, de maintenir le niveau, le standard qui est demandé par des agences comme le GAFI et autres, l'Union européenne, afin qu'on reste toujours en dehors de ces listes. Tout à l'heure, l'honorable Boulel parlait de la réputation de Maurice d'antan, comme une juridiction, un pays où les gens regardaient Maurice comme une référence. Et on a tendance, bien souvent, Monsieur le Président, de sous-estimer ce qu'on fait ici. Et je dis ça toujours parce que j'ai eu l'occasion, ces derniers mois, comme ministre responsable de ce secteur, de rencontrer beaucoup d'étrangers, beaucoup d'investisseurs étrangers, à Maurice comme ailleurs. Et quand ils parlent de Maurice, je dois dire, ils parlent avec des mots élogieux. Ils ont une image de Maurice où il fait bon vivre, où il y a un système, il y a des infrastructures adéquates pour faire du business, où ils veulent venir mettre en place leur structure. Mais, à entendre certains ici à Maurice, on demande est-ce qu'on a besoin des adversaires de l'étranger pour venir nuire à notre réputation. Et c'est ça qui est dommage, malheureusement, Monsieur le Président. Et on prend souvent l'exemple de Singapour. Est-ce que vous entendez un jour un Singapourien dire quoi que ce soit de mauvais de Singapour? Et des parlementaires de surpoids. Donc, il faut qu'on cesse ce genre d'attitude, Monsieur le Président. C'est un secteur qui emploie beaucoup de personnes, des jeunes professionnels, comme a si bien dit le collègue l'honorable Boulel, des gens qui gagnent bien leur vie. Mais ne faites pas cette erreur, Monsieur Lavin Boulel, le cœur, de nuire à la réputation de notre juridiction. Et laissez-moi signaler, il y a à peine quelques semaines, il y a eu une conférence des SAMLAG, où il y a eu la participation d'une délégation mauricienne. Certains sont là hier, aujourd'hui. Ils n'ont pas arrêté de citer Maurice comme l'exemple en termes de se mettre en conformité avec toutes ces recommandations du GAFI. Aujourd'hui, Maurice est en conformité avec 39 sur 40 des recommandations du GAFI. Et probablement, dans quelques mois, j'espère que vous aussi, vous allez nous soutenir dessus. On sera peut-être le seul pays au monde avec 40 sur 40 recommandations. Donc, tout à l'heure, Dr Boulel parlait de Bastos, encore une fois. Il ne sait même pas que Bastos, à l'époque que Bastos est arrivé à Maurice, il était au pouvoir, dans le gouvernement. Il va demander l'honorable leader de l'opposition. Et il va savoir. Donc, c'est bon, j'aime pas retourner en arrière, mais comme il faisait partie, comme il a fait référence à ce monsieur, donc je voulais quand même ramener les choses dans ces perspectives, Monsieur le Président. Donc, pour moi, ce que je veux dire, Monsieur le Président, nous voulons avancer. Le ministère, le gouvernement a un objectif clair par rapport à comment ce secteur doit développer. On veut doubler sa contribution sur l'économie mauricienne. Et pour cela, justement, on vient avec un certain nombre de nouveaux produits. Et il y a aussi les produits existants qu'on est dans le revoir pour les rendre encore plus attrayants. La formation, vous avez parlé, là encore, je dois dire, on n'arrête pas la formation. On va continuer parce qu'il faut toujours préparer nos jeunes à pouvoir entrer dans ce secteur. L'honorable Lobin a parlé justement qu'il y a un besoin d'upscale nos officiers. Et je dois dire que ceux aussi, on ne les signe pas. Et c'est la raison pour laquelle beaucoup des Mauriciens sont poachés par des juridictions comme Luxembourg. C'est pour dire à quel niveau de formation aujourd'hui on a parmi nos compatriotes. Donc, c'est pour ça que je dis, il ne faut pas trop souvent faire croire que Maurice, rien ne va. Or, c'est un secteur qui, pour moi, a un grand avenir, un secteur qui va compter beaucoup pour l'économie mauricienne. Et j'espère que, bien sûr, cette attitude, cette mentalité qu'on a à continuellement faire croire que tout est noir à Maurice va changer. Une fois qu'on comprend que c'est l'avenir du pays qui est en jeu. Alors, une dernière chose, peut-être, parce que ça, le docteur Arvind Boulel avait fait mention de ce rapport de M. Krishna. Et ça, c'est pour le Gift City, M. l'honorable Boulel. Ce n'est pas pour Maurice. Donc, je voulais juste corriger cette perception. On peut croire que c'était pour notre juridiction. Donc, Monsieur le Président, voilà encore une fois un produit qu'on est en train de mettre à la portée des acteurs de cette industrie, que pour moi va servir à donner un nouveau souffle à notre secteur de services financiers. Je suis sûr que tous ceux qui ont travaillé et contribué pour arriver là aujourd'hui vont être satisfaits qu'on a délivré sur nos promesses. Je voulais tenir à remercier avant de terminer tous les officiers qui ont travaillé pour qu'on soit là aujourd'hui, à commencer par les officiers de mon ministère, les officiers de la Financial Services Commission, il y a les officiers du bureau du State Law Office, bien sûr les opérateurs et tous ceux qui ont apporté leur contribution. Et encore une fois, je remercie tous les membres qui ont apporté leur contribution lors de ces débats sur ce projet de loi. Avec ces quelques mots, Monsieur le Président, I commend the bill to the House. Merci.
Seconded. The question is that the Valuable Capital Companies Bill number 3 of 2022 be read a second time. Those in favor say aye, those against say no. Aye. Ayes have it.
Bills Committee stage. Clause 1, short title. Clause 2, interpretation. Clause 3, setting up a variable capital company. Clause 4, specific provisions relating to continuation. Clause 5, legal personality and structure. Clause 6, name and constitution. Clause 7, operation of variable capital company. Clause 8, creation of subfund. Clause 9, creation of special purpose vehicle. Clause 10, incorporation of subfund or special purpose vehicle. Clause 11, segregated assets and liabilities of subfund and special purpose vehicle.
The question is that clauses 1 to 11 stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye, those against say no. Aye. The ayes have it.
Clause 12, CIS manager, CIS administrator and custodian. Clause 13, disclosure and transactions. Clause 14, cross-subfund or special purpose vehicle investment. Clause 15, legal proceedings. Clause 16, voluntary winding up of subfund or special purpose vehicle. Clause 17, winding up of subfund or special purpose vehicle by court. Clause 18, withdrawal or approval of subfund or special purpose vehicle. Clause 19, direction to support activities of subfund or special purpose vehicle. Clause 20, shares. Clause 21, power to redeem and buy back shares. Clause 22, reduction of share capital. Clause 23, record keeping. Clause 24, filing of accounts. Clause 25, offense. Clause 26, consequential amendments. Clause 27, regulation. Clause 28, commencement.
The question that clauses 12 to 28 stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. Aye. The ayes have it.
The schedule.
Question that schedule stands part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. Aye. The ayes have it.
Title and enacting clause.
The question is that the title and enacting clause stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. Aye. The ayes have it. The question that I do report to the House that the Variable Capital Companies Bill number 3 of 2022 has passed the committee stage without amendment. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. Aye. The ayes have it. Please be seated. Honourable members have to report to the House that the Variable Capital Companies Bill number 3 of 2022 has passed the committee stage without amendment.
Third reading.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I move that the Variable Capital Companies Bill number 3 of 2022 be read a third time and passed.
Seconded. The question is that the Variable Capital Companies Bill number 3 of 2022 be read the third time and passed. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. Aye. The ayes have it.
I move that the Assembly be adjourned to Tuesday, 19th April at 11:30, Mr. Speaker.
The House stands adjourned. Adjournment time, I would invite the Deputy Speaker to take the chair.
Thank you very much. Please be seated. Honorable Ganga Prasad.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. The matter I wish to raise is addressed to the Honorable Minister of Youth Empowerment, Sports and Recreation. Honorable Minister, I am making this request on behalf of the inhabitants of Petit Rafray and the vicinity, who have informed me that currently they cannot use the Petit Rafray football ground in the evening because there is an issue with lighting. As you may be aware, an increasing number of people who work during the day normally use the football ground in the evening. In the absence of lighting facilities, they are unable to use the football ground in the evening. On their behalf, I request you to do the needful so that the playground is soon provided with proper lighting. I thank you.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I thank the honourable member who has already given me advance notice that he is going to raise this issue. I am well aware of this situation. In fact, my colleagues, MPs, Honourable Minister Tilak and Honourable P.P.S. Ramdoni, have already raised this issue with me. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I'm informed by the officers of our ministry that the ESD is actually looking into the matter, and hopefully a solution will be provided soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Omir.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. My request is addressed to the Honourable Minister of Health. I have had a very emotional request from the very close relatives of baby, whom I'm not going to name, N.E., aged 3.5 years old, who has a very severe neurological disorder. As per her treating specialist, she needs very specialized treatment, among which we're talking about stem cell treatment and cannabinoids. I humbly request you to see if you can use your good office to see that these treatment facilities be provided to her. Thank you.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, the baby, if she's having a treatment at the hospital center, and if this treatment is not available in Mauritius, so there is always a recourse to have treatment on overseas treatment. So I believe that they have to follow the procedures, and once the board decided that this baby should be sent abroad for treatment, that will be done. But I'll rest assured, Honourable Member, that I am going to follow this matter.
Thank you, Minister. Honourable Denu, please. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. My agenda matter is addressed to Honorable Alan Ganu, Minister of Transport and Light Rail. The matters I would like to raise concern the Traffic Management Road Safety Unit. I would like to inform the Minister that many of bus shelters in my constituency of QPIP, Midlands, has been damaged during the cyclone of Batsirai. Many at Saint-Hélène, Midlands, Cité Saint-Luc, Commiation and Saint-Jamil. As you are aware, QPIP is a rainy place, and this is causing many problems for the inhabitants and the users. I would request the Minister if he could use his good office to talk to the Traffic Road Management and Safety Unit to firstly repair and replace the bus shelters as mentioned earlier. And also I would like to request the Honourable Minister to request the TRMSU to look into the road markings in QPIP and Midlands, which is causing a big problem for road users and ambulances traveling to hospital and nearby clinics.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Honourable Minister, please.
I thank the Honourable Member, Mr. Deputy Speaker, for the two complaints he has raised. As regards bus shelters, I am informed that there are two types of bus shelters, one which falls under the control of the TMRSU, and the others which are sponsored and fall under the NLTA. I am informed, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, those under TMRSU undergo regular maintenance. With regard to those under the control of the sponsors, they are supposed to maintain their bus shelters. And I'm also informed by the NLTA that these bus shelters, in case these bus shelters require any repairs under any circumstances, including following passage of cyclone, it is the responsibility of the promoter to ensure remedial actions. So, nevertheless, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I will take up the matter with the NLTA and with the TMRSU with respect to any bus shelter which has been damaged during the cyclone. With regard to road markings, again, the road markings fall under the aegis of TMRSU, and these road markings, I'm informed, undergo regular maintenance. However, some road markings fall under local authorities. But if the Honourable Member would give me a list of the road markings which are the subject matter which need repainting, I will request the TMRSU to do the needful and to carry out a survey in that respect.
Thank you, Minister. Honourable Tu.
Merci, Monsieur le Vice-président. Ma requête s'adresse aussi au ministre des Transports terrestres, l'honorable Alan Ganou, concernant un problème d'autobus dans deux endroits de ma circonscription, notamment à Vallée des Prêtres, le trajet Chitrakout-Caroline-Port-Louis, et à Kongoma, le trajet Kongoma-Port-Louis. Il se trouve que les autobus passent à des heures irrégulières et ne respectent pas les horaires. Du coup, il y a de longues périodes d'attente et les élèves arrivent souvent en retard à l'école. Je demande donc au ministre de bien vouloir faire appel à la NTA afin de rétablir l'ordre.
I will certainly look into the matter, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Sir, I will inform the NLTA about the request made by the Honourable Member, but may I inform the House that Vallée des Prêtres is a large locality which is situated in the outskirts of Port-Louis, as we all know. In fact, it is divided into two distinct sub-localities, commonly known as Lower Vallée des Prêtres and Upper Vallée des Prêtres, Chitrakout. It is the UBS, which is a public transport service provider for this locality. In fact, it operates along 5 different routes, and in line with the established bus schedule, bus services are available during the whole day, as from 5:25 in the morning up to 18:35 in the afternoon, Mr. Deputy Speaker, at intervals varying from 15 to 20 minutes during peak hours and 30 to 45 minutes during off-peak hours. I am apprised that the NLT has received several complaints regarding the non-observance of timetable, especially during off-peaks. Consequently, the UBS has been informed of the situation, and the latter has agreed to ensure prompt remedial action.
Thank you, Minister. Honourable Kiran, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Vice-président. Ma requête ce soir s'adresse au ministre de la Santé et a trait aux difficultés qu'ont les personnes qui se rendent à l'hôpital G2 pour se faire soigner, à trouver un endroit pour pouvoir garer leur véhicule. Et beaucoup de ces personnes résident dans ma circonscription de Beaubassin-Petite-Rivière et d'après les informations qui me sont parvenues, l'aire de stationnement étant occupée exclusivement par le personnel hospitalier, en particulier les médecins. Donc, il est pratiquement impossible pour ces patients ou les membres de leur famille, qui souvent les accompagnent, de pouvoir trouver un endroit pour se garer, ne serait-ce que quelques minutes. Et souvent, je dois faire ressortir qu'il y a des altercations entre les chauffeurs de taxi et les membres du public par rapport à ce problème. Je demande donc à l'honorable ministre de la Santé de bien vouloir s'assurer qu'une solution soit trouvée urgemment.
Thank you, Honourable Minister, please.
Yes, thank you, Honourable Member. Yes, I agree with you that there is a problem for parking at G2 Hospital. Obviously, we'll look into that matter with the RHD over there.
Thank you. Honourable David, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Vice-président. Ma requête de ce soir s'adresse au ministre des Transports terrestres et renvoie à une problématique que j'ai soulevée à l'ajournement du 3 novembre 2020, puis à celui du 23 novembre 2021. Il s'agit de la déviation du trafic de bus à travers le morcellement Soubra à Pointe-Sable. Cette déviation, annoncée comme étant temporaire, dure maintenant depuis 2 ans à travers un quartier résidentiel via la rue Guillaume-Apollinaire qui est clairement inadaptée à la circulation de bus. Dans sa réponse du 23 novembre dernier, le ministre des Transports a annoncé une date de fin des travaux de la NDU pour le 15 décembre 2021, à la suite de quoi un test routier devait être conjointement effectué avec la TMRSU le long de la route côtière de Pointe-Sable. 4 mois après la date annoncée des fins de travaux, 2 ans après un trafic de bus incessant et épuisant, les habitants de la rue Guillaume-Apollinaire ont tous signé une pétition pour demander l'arrêt de ce trafic routier, pétition que je dépose ce soir devant notre Assemblée, tout en demandant au ministre où en est ce dossier. Merci.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, with regard to this issue of traffic problems at Morcellement Soubra, Pointe-Sable, true it is that the Honourable Member on 2 occasions raised the issue in the House, but unfortunately I am advised that works for the construction of the footpath and drains by the National Development Unit along the coastal road Pointe-Sable are still ongoing. And therefore the situation is due to the delays in this implementation of the project. From what I understand, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is expected that these works will be completed by July 2022. Therefore, in view of that situation, buses are still proceeding to the traffic center via Morcellement Soubra. Once the work would be completed, I can assure the Honourable Member that buses will be rerouted. So I hope the Honourable Member will understand the situation, and I thank him for having raised the issue once again. But I can assure him that on the part of my ministry, we will monitor the situation.
Thank you very much, Honourable Dachsheli, please.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. My request tonight is addressed to the Honourable Minister of Gender Equality and Family Welfare. It concerns some community centres of constituency number 9. However, there are 2 which requires special attention, that of Grand Retraite and Pont Blanc. The fencing and light poles have fallen down, and that of Grand Retraite Community Centre, which is also used as a refugee centre, has floor tiles which are coming up, and these damages are also a safety hazard. I will just humbly request the Honourable Minister to please carry out an urgent refurbishment to these community centres. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, please.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I thank the Honourable Member for having brought the matter to my attention. I wish to reassure the House that we are at the level of the Ministry, under the Sugar Industry Labour Welfare Fund, we are taking advantage of the fact that at the moment all the centres are closed to effect renovation works. As to the specific centre mentioned by the Honourable Member, Grande Retraite Community Centre, that centre, I believe, has a tender which is going to be awarded shortly. I don't have the closing date in mind, sorry. The work is going to be carried out. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Dulab.
Merci, Monsieur le Vice-président. Ma requête s'adresse au ministre du Transport, l'honorable Alan Ganou. Je suis en présence de doléances de quelques parents habitant le village de Mort-d'Albert et dont les enfants voyagent par le bus pour aller à l'école à Curpip. Donc, je fais référence à la route numéro 9. Il se trouve que très souvent, ils doivent attendre parfois jusqu'à 1 heure le matin pour qu'ils puissent trouver un autobus, la raison étant que plusieurs de ces autobus qui desservent la route 9 ne s'arrêtent pas. Je demande donc au ministre de s'enquérir de cette situation pour une solution. Merci.
Thank you, Honourable Minister, please.
I thank the honourable member, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I will look into the matter, but perhaps I should inform the House that no public bus can refuse access to commuters, to school children, if seating accommodation is available in this bus. And if such offences are reported to the NLTA, the latter will initiate actions and probably disciplinary actions against the defaulters.
Thank you very much, Honourable Lubin.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Sir, my request is addressed to Honourable Hariram, Minister of National Infrastructure and Community Development. It concerns the construction that is ongoing at La Marie Road, B64. 3 bridges are being built along Avenue Charles de Gaulle, La Caverne Dispensary, and there is a diversion scheme in place since 17th of March 2022, but the scheme is not working properly, in as much as there are no policemen on site at peak hours to make the traffic goes there smoothly. If you could look into the matter, maybe with the contractor, because they need to liaise with the TMRSU. I've sent you pictures. If you could look into the matter, please.
Minister, please.
Thank you, my honourable colleague. And thank you for giving advance notice of this question. I have checked with the officers. In fact, the officers are confirming me that they've checked with the contractor and they are police officers on site. But I'll check it myself with PPS Bubbly. We'll go inside and have a look at it. As you rightly said, we have 3 bridges being built. And as you would have noticed during the recent flooding, this region hasn't been affected. The works, ils sont en train de porter leurs fruits. So please bear with us. I know it's a difficult situation. We rely on your support for us to be able to address this situation and ask for patience from the public. And this work will only last, now we are heading toward the end, so we are remaining hardly 10 days work more before we can open that bridge, and we have 3 brand new bridges that will alleviate the flooding problem and the traffic problem will be solved. And at the same time, I'll thank my honourable colleague Babli for his help. We will now be constructing the Hollywood Bridge and repairing that road. We'll invite you for the site visit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honourable Ramphel.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I wish to raise an issue to the address of the Honourable Prime Minister on behalf of the families who have been affected by the recent flooding at Plenmagnon. Unfortunately, the Honourable Prime Minister is not here, but may I, through the Deputy Prime Minister, ask that those families have been severely affected by the recent flooding. Many of them have sustained substantial material losses, which includes their appliances, furniture, school materials and all that. So may I request the Honourable Prime Minister to consider using the funds from the Prime Minister's Relief Fund to consider if a reasonable compensation could be provided to those families so that they can cover for the expenses for the purchase of their furnitures and household appliances, etc. Thank you.
Message will certainly be conveyed to the Prime Minister, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. But should I remind the honourable gentleman that the families concerned need to be advised, first and foremost, to give a proper declaration to the police, listing the list of all the items of property loss. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur le Vice-président. Ma requête s'adresse au Premier ministre adjoint, ministre du Logement, du réaménagement du territoire, de l'aménagement du territoire et du tourisme. Et cela concerne les appartements de la NHDC de Bambou et de Bassin. Alors, après les grosses pluies, il nous a été rapporté que pas mal d'appartements sont régulièrement inondés. Il y a des fuites, comme on dit, la case peut couler. Alors, je demanderai humblement au ministre de bien vouloir considérer les doléances de ses habitants et traiter cette situation en urgence. Merci.
Thank you. Honourable DPM.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I was not aware of this situation until the Honourable Lady raised it with me earlier today, so I would be grateful if she could provide me with particulars of these complaints, and I shall see to it that they are attended to at the earliest by the NHDC.
Honourable Lechman-Roy.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. My request is addressed to Dr. the Honourable Vice Prime Minister, Minister of Local Government and Disaster Risk Management, Dr. Anwar Hasnu, with regard to the project construction of a multi-sport complex and music school at the first floor level at the existing Abercrombie Market Fair building. The project started in August 2021 and is expected to be completed in August 2022. However, it has been brought to my attention that there are some serious delays which are causing inconvenience to the inhabitants and to the users of the market fair, following, I think, a confusion with the consultant. So I would humbly request the Vice Prime Minister to look into the matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Vice Prime Minister.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I know, this project, there are a number of issues with this particular project. In fact, I'm planning to have a focus meeting on this particular project because there has been a lot of problems that's been going on for some time. So I'll be contacting all the stakeholders, Municipality of Port Louis, the consultant, the contractor, and the member of Parliament in Constitution number 4. And hopefully, if next week, if I have some time, if it's convenient to everybody, we'll arrange a meeting next week to sort it out.
Thank you, Vice Prime Minister. Honourable Jean Béranger.
Ma requête s'adresse à l'honorable ministre de l'Égalité des genres et du bien-être de la famille. Si je ne me trompe pas, les centres sociaux tombent sous sa responsabilité et en temps normal, ils fournissent des équipements aux habitants de la localité, tels que des chaises, des prélats, entre autres, pour les événements comme les mariages, les funérailles, les sessions de prière, etc. Nous le savons, les centres sociaux sont encore fermés actuellement, malheureusement. Cependant, les événements que j'ai mentionnés continuent d'avoir lieu dans le respect des restrictions sanitaires. Et les habitants ont donc besoin de ces facilités. Je demande à la ministre de bien vouloir s'assurer que la livraison des équipements essentiels à ces différents types d'événements puisse être possible, bien évidemment, dans le respect du protocole sanitaire. Merci.
Thank you. Honourable Minister, please.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I shall definitely look into the matter and make sure that it is being addressed. Thank you.
Honourable Anquetil.
Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Vice-président. Ma requête s'adresse au ministre des Transports terrestres et du Light Rail. Je sollicite l'intervention du ministre pour que la ligne de bus existante à destination et en provenance d'Henrietta puisse passer par la NHDC de Campmapou à Henrietta pour éviter que les enfants et les usagers des transports publics de cette zone se retrouvent à marcher plus de 1,5 km pour prendre le bus. Je suis en possession d'une lettre du syndic de la NHDC d'Henrietta en date du 2 novembre 2019, adressée au secrétaire permanent de ce ministère à cet effet. Aucune action n'a été prise à ce jour, malgré les promesses datant de décembre 2015. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Vice-président.
Thank you. Honourable Minister, please.
Yes, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I have been informed by the NLTA because the issue raised by the honourable member was the subject matter of a PQ, which unfortunately was not answered. Therefore, I have the information that the NHDC estate of Henrietta is found at 500 meters from Beau Cascade bus station. I am further informed that buses operating along the following routes serve this bus station: 3B, 66, 134, 141, and 255. But nevertheless, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, as a result of the request made by the inhabitants, my ministry will make necessary arrangements for a joint road test to be carried out by the TMRSU and the NLTA, based on which a decision will be taken with regard to the extension of the aforementioned bus services up to the NHDC estate of Henrietta. I am informed that the number of habitants residing at the NSDC estates of Angita is, in fact, approximately 500, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. And as I said, 4 lines, 4 bus services which are available from this bus station, different follow different routes, the 3B, the 66, as I just said, and 3 other routes. So it will depend on the report, everything will depend on the report which will be provided by the TMRSU and the NLTA, and the decision then will be taken.
Thank you very much. I think we're done. Good night.